Welcome to the Unitarian Congregation of Guelph and our Samhain service. My name is Rebecca Jameson, and I'm your co-leader today for the service, along with Lauren Stein and Linda Reith. Thanks to Bill Greenaway for his technical support. At UCG, we work to be a diverse community of mixed ages, genders, sexual orientation, and race, and we welcome all who come in search of truth and meaning. Wherever we travel on Turtle Island, Indigenous peoples have been here for thousands of years and have much to teach us about walking a good path on the earth and with one another. This week is Treaty Week in Ontario, and so if you have some time to learn about the 46 treaties and other agreements that cover this province, that would be a good step towards building relationships of trust and understanding with Indigenous peoples. Guelph is on the treaty lands of the Mississaugas, or the Michisageek of New Credit First Nations. In our community right now are people from many Indigenous cultures, including the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Métis, and Inuit. We express gratitude for the sharing of these lands. We also acknowledge the grief and pain suffered by First Peoples as a result of harmful colonial policies. As individuals and as a congregation, each of us has a responsibility to learn and act with deep respect towards Indigenous peoples and the land. We are pleased to have you here with us on our Zoom service today, and we invite you to linger on the call after the service. The Unitarian Congregation of Guelph is lay-led with a part-time minister, which means that every service is unique with different service leaders and speakers. So do come a few times so you can get a sense of what we're all about. We invite you to sign up for our email newsletter and reach out if you have any questions. At the end of today's service, we will be making our weekly announcements. Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote 7 principles, which we hold as strong values and moral guides. We live out these principles with a living tradition of wisdom and spirituality, drawn from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. This week's service is partly founded in our 3rd Unitarian principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. To start our service today, I would like each of you to look at all the different people that are here in our service today, and we're going to create a circle, kind of imagining a container for all of us. So we're going to send out our own little tendrils of energy and cast it out in a big wide circle around our community, around the people here, passing it from person to person, from myself to Bill, to Linda, to Berna, to Jim, imagining our threads intertwining with one another to create a really big circle beyond Guelph, beyond our province. I'm not sure today if we have any people from even further away, but we have Steve and Maria way up in Manitoulin. We've got people out in Nova Scotia right now. So casting a big circle of love and safety for all of us this morning as we do our work together here. So if you can, all of you imagine that big circle that we're creating, and we're leaning into that circle of connection. And the circle is cast. We are between the worlds. What happens between the worlds can change the worlds. And now for our opening words.
Our opening words this week are by Norman Fisher. Our loss, our wound is precious to us because it can wake us up to love and to loving action. I'll repeat those words by Norman Fisher. Our loss, our wound is precious to us because it can wake us up to love and to loving action. Please join me in lighting the chalice with words included in the chat. In this flame, we witness the power of transformation. Awed again by the wonder of life, we are grateful to be vital to this living universe and inspiring community. Our song is called Return Again, written by Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach and sung by his daughter, Shama.
Return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
Thank you for that. I will now share with you a story for all ages. And as an improviser, I might call a little bit on your help for telling the story. So I'm going to ask you at some point to contribute words into the chat. We can practice that now. If I said, enter a number into the chat, try entering a number and make it to everyone so that I can see it. Perfect. Thank you. So this is on the theme today with Samhain and communicating with lost loved ones and with grief. So it may be a bit more of a tearjerker than I'm used to, but I'll tell you my tale. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Milo. He lived in a tower in a fairy tale kingdom. When he became a teenager, he was rebellious and he would fight against his parents, like any other, well, a lot of other teenage boys. One day, he came home from his solo walk in the woods to find a doctor leaning over his parents' bed. And when the doctor left, he found out that his mother had been diagnosed with some nondescript disease. And even though he used to scream at his mother, when he heard that her health wasn't good, he began to weep. He very much wanted to keep her alive. He didn't know what to say or how to be around his parents or what to do, so he ran away. He decided to go out on a quest. He went to consult the wizard in the village, and he asked the wizard if there was anything that could be done to keep his mother alive. And the wizard said, yes, there was one thing. You need to find a rare and magical object. Now, here's where I need your help. What is the rare magical object that Milo had to find to save his mother from a nondescript disease? So the first answer I get is a troll skull. And as you might know, it's very difficult to find a troll skull, because if you just get it as a toy, there's only the rubber outside and not the inside. So Milo really had to go on a quest. He traveled here and there and near and far, realizing he needed to find a real live troll. And then the troll had to die so he could get the skull, which is a very complicated and ethical quandary. So luckily he knows that trolls live in two places. One is under a bridge and the second is on the internet. And this fairy tale kingdom doesn't have the internet yet. So he had to go to a bridge where he found a troll. And he said, he knocked on the bridge, which is a weird place to knock, and then the troll didn't come out. So he actually tried going on the bridge, and then the troll came out and said, hey, you have to pay me, because that's the way they work. Anyway, so he said to the troll, thanks for coming. I know I'm supposed to pay you a toll, but actually I really need this. It's an awkward ask, but I need your skull. And the troll's like, what? No. Why? And he's like, well, I need to save my mother. And then the troll said, well, why should I die for you to save your mother? That sounds unfair to me. And he thought about it, and he realized, yeah, that is kind of unfair to kill one to save another. This is the type of thing that Superman was tasked with all the time, like either save Lois Lane and the whole megatropolis or whatever would die, or vice versa. And Milo's not quite Superman, so he wasn't ready to make such a decision. So he said, okay, thank you. Are there any other trolls? Maybe is there a troll cemetery? Like, what happens after trolls die and I can find a skull? And the troll said, no, we live forever. That's not really, we don't have just kind of bones all over the place. And he said, maybe in another kingdom I could go and find trolls elsewhere. And the troll was like, you can try, but pay the toll and cross the bridge and keep looking. So he did. So Milo paid the troll and crossed the bridge and went to the next kingdom. And what was the name of the next kingdom? If you can type that in the chat, and I'll find out where he got to. Eden Mills. Okay. So Milo found himself in Eden Mills, which is such a beautiful place. Did you know they're aiming to be carbon neutral really soon? And Trolltopia is another name, I guess, for Eden Mills. So he got there and he was like, where are all the trolls? And the answer came during our Writers' Festival. There are going to be books about trolls. And then he said, great, when's that going to be? And the answer was, it's usually September, but this year, due to COVID, it's online, and that's where you'll find internet trolls. It's a whole complicated thing. So Milo kept looking, and unfortunately, due to COVID, he couldn't find any troll skulls. And he just had to maybe either try somewhere else or go home. And if he could, he would go everywhere and anywhere. But it was getting very late, and time to move to next parts of our ritual. So finally he got back to that bridge and he paid the troll the toll to cross the bridge to go back to the kingdom. And he tried to pick up flowers and stones and a drum, and he even found a magic rock and a mushroom and a lizard's tail and the moon and a precious stone and kryptonite and sunbeams from Sandra. And he picked up each one of those in a big bouquet and brought them back to his tower, where his mother was in bed and his father was looking over. And he told them the story and he said, I looked far and wide to try and get a troll skull to save your life, but it turns out trolls live forever and humans don't. And it was very complicated and I couldn't. And as he was telling his story and telling all the words, his mother really understood what he was saying is, I love you. And when the mother heard that, she said back to Milo, I love you too. And she said to him, I may not live forever, but what you can do is every year on this day, you can go back to those woods and you can speak to me and you'll know by a sign that I'll be speaking to you too. And in this way, we can continue to communicate, even if I am no longer alive. And that is how Milo learned to really have a strong connection with his mother, no matter what happened. The end. Thank you. We now come to the joys and concerns part of our service. This is usually the time where we take the offering in our service. Please take a moment to acknowledge and give thanks for all the many ways that people support the UCG with participation, from keeping in touch with fellow congregants to generously donating their time and talents to keep our services, programs, and building running. Thank you. Our congregation thrives because of the commitment of so many among you. And even in these strange times, UCG's financial needs continue to pay our staff and keep the building maintained. So your continued financial support is deeply appreciated. Our website has instructions for how you can make your tax-deductible donation before the end of the year. Thank you. I now pass along to Linda.
So this being Samhain, I'm going to lead us in a meditation on death. And the theme that we're exploring together is, what does your grief reveal to you in terms of what's precious, what you treasure, and how you might choose to act based on that preciousness. We are living in anxious times. What we thought we could count on now feels tenuous, uncertain. We're drawn to Netflix, to mindlessness, to escape. Yet, here we are, joining in community to open to death and its meaning in our lives. My friend Janice Falls wrote, "Life without death is a run-on sentence. Death's punctuation brings a hard stop. It wakes us up." October was a month of glory as the plants around us prepared for the little death of winter. Orange, red, and yellow trees lit with sunshine invited us for walks in the forest, set the table for our seeing the complexity and beauty all around us. It is in the very fleetingness of life that we glimpse what is precious. We are charged again with the urgency of being fully present. Today, we invite you to notice what death and grief have brought to your attention. We ask you to notice that the final stage of grief is not acceptance, but action. One of the great blessings of my life is my friendship with my late friend Jean. We met as young women, setting off to explore the world by teaching high school in the impoverished country of Malawi. For a couple of years, we shared a deep and transformative opportunity, and we became integral to each other's lives. All her life, Jean moved slowly. Some of that was a certain inability to streamline, to sort. More of it was a refusal to rush, a repudiation of the pressure of urgency. Many were angered by her refusal of the clock's supremacy. She did not try to change. She accepted the friction caused by the difference and trusted love would ease the rub. She lived her truth unapologetically. She insisted on life's significance. Cancer was her nemesis, and she strove to meet it with integrity. If it meant there was unresolved trauma, she would open to the process of accepting all that had been denied in the pain, so it could be part of her unblocked, undiseased way. She tried to see cancer as her teacher, her guide. When death through cancer became absolutely, inevitably her path, she organized a dance party with a live band for her 70th birthday. That was May. And by September, she was gone, weeping only at the prospect of missing the unfolding of the lives of her nieces and nephews, her intimate friends. For herself, death was peace. Now, I welcome patience, invoking Jean's rich tolerance for what is, not what is prescribed. Now, I honor my weirdness, trusting my right to self-expression within the web of all. That means that I can honor your weirdness more fully too, a gift to both of us. For a while, I was bereft. Now I am more truly alive. I'm going to make a space of quiet here and ask you to sit with this question. How has death and its maid-serving grief deepened you, changed you, opened you to be more fully alive, enabled you to engage instead of to numb? I'll call us back with a chime. I'd like to share with you this poem. It's called Unbuttoning My Shirt by Ross Gay. No one knew, or at least I didn't know they knew, what the thin discs threaded here on my shirt might give me in terms of joy. This is not something to be taken lightly, the gift of buttoning one's shirt slowly, top to bottom, or bottom to top, or sometimes the buttons will be on the other side, and I am a woman that morning. Slipping the glass through its slot, I tread differently that day, or some of it anyway. My conversations are different, and the car bombs flooding the air and the people in it for a quarter mile. And the honeybee's legs, furred with pollen, mean another thing to me than on the other days, which too have been drizzled in this simplest of joys, in this world of spaceships and subatomic this and that. 2, maybe 3 times a day. Some days I have the distinct pleasure of slowly untethering one side from the other, which is like unbuckling a stack of vertebrae with delicacy, for I must only use the tips of my fingers, with which I will one day close my mother's eyes. This is as delicate as we can be in this life, practicing like this, giving the raft of our hands to the clumsy spider and blowing soft until she lifts her damp heft and crawls off. We practice like this, pushing the seed into the earth like this, first in the morning, then at night. We practice sliding the bones in. And that's Unbuttoning My Shirt by Ross Gay. Rebecca, Lauren, and I thought about the best way to explore this topic of what our grief reveals for us, inspires in us. And we asked members of our community to reflect and share their reflections. So Jim Wilton, will you begin? And each person will follow in order, introducing themselves until all have reported.
Good morning. Thank you, Linda. So, yes, my name is Jim Wilton, and I'm hoping to share a few personal thoughts on this topic of grief, and I'm terming it grief and resilience. I think we are all complex mixtures of our backgrounds and experiences and interactions. For myself, I grew up on a farm in southern Manitoba, became fascinated by genetics, and wound up going to the universities of Guelph and Cornell, and then spent 40 years as a professor at Guelph. I was lucky to find a soulmate when I was just 19 in Berna, sitting beside me here. We have 3 kids and 7 grandkids. I was raised in the United Church of Canada in a rural pastoral charge with a mixture of levels of progressive and non-progressive ministers. My mother was very liberal and my father very conservative in their religious outlooks. Berna and I raised our kids in the United Church and were very active church members. We did question some of the dogma of the church and some ministers. In the early 90s, Berna found Unitarians in Guelph, and we've been members ever since. So that is a very quick background to some of the perspectives I want to share with you. As for everyone, over the years, there have been many moments of both grief and joy. All of these are a part of who I am and what I think today. In the short time here, I decided to share the grief and impacts of one particular tragedy. When I was in my second year at university, my younger brother, Alan, died of apparent suicide. This is still hard to say and is something I have not talked about till now. His death brought real trauma to the family with all the questions and angst associated with suicide. My parents were devastated, of course. My father's faith was in a powerful and punishing God, which was a cause of great and life-enduring pain. My mother's faith was more centered on love and kindness in life, which I believe led her to solace and continuing action in love of family and kindness to all. The grief I felt for my brother and my family has never left me. It is one part of who I am today. I believe it is part of the mosaic of who I am. It is a part of my outlook on life that all of us need to work hard to understand others and to be compassionate in our attitudes and actions. I have been fortunate to have the loving support from Berna, along with times in nature, the forests, times in contemplating ideas in literature, times in joining Unitarians in singing and discussing the big questions of life. The last 2 weeks discussing a complete systems approach to community and a comparison of failure and grief in our ongoing commitments are two excellent examples of these discussions with Unitarians. I think all of these supports have helped me create my ideas around a holistic perspective of life, which incorporates a whole range of griefs and joys, and a passion for seeking solutions. Hopefully, my actions will make at least some small contributions now to understanding and compassion in our struggling world. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Naomi. I've been a member of the UCG since the early 90s as well. And I'm currently a member at large on the board. When Linda asked me if I would participate in this service and told me about the theme, the first thing that came to mind was the death of my parents in July of last year. Theirs were the first deaths that I had experienced of someone so close to me. My father's health had been declining over the preceding months, and my mother had a diagnosis of stage 4 lung cancer. They chose to have a medically assisted death together. Prior to them making this decision, when I thought about what their end-of-life experience might be, never did I think they would die at the same time. I felt orphaned after they died, and ill-prepared for what the grieving process had in store for me. However, I decided to let grief happen. I knew grief would show up in different ways on different days. And I was also able to step back from the process at times and watch it unfold. Never having experienced this before, it was all a revelation. And when I wasn't in the middle of it, I found it fascinating. People say that you will always have the memories of the good times you had with the person who died. But I was skeptical about whether those memories would make me feel better when I was recalling them, but maybe also worse because they were gone. I did find myself thinking about my relationship with them as a daughter, and whether I had been all I could be to them through their lives. During the last months and weeks of their lives, I tried my best to help them with all sorts of things, including initiating the process of medical assistance in dying, or MAID, which was one of the most difficult tasks I took on. I felt at the time that by being in their lives and helping them with everyday things, I was showing them my love and dedication. However, many regrets surfaced after their deaths, as I think they must do for a lot of people after a loved one dies. I should have told them I loved them more often. I should have thanked them more often for all they did to help me through difficult times. Knowing in advance that they were both going to die on July the 3rd, why didn't I spend more time telling them those things? Did they really know how much I appreciated their presence in my life? All these thoughts made me think about my relationship with my daughter Roya, who just celebrated her 26th birthday. Some of you who have known Roya since her birth know what a strong, independent young woman she is. There is no one I love more on this earth than Roya. But I still wonder on a regular basis whether I have shown her my love enough. Yeah, she knows I love her, but is it just like when you say, "Love you," at the end of every phone call or text? Or does she really understand that I would have done and would do anything to keep her safe and happy? She's in a stage of her life where she doesn't feel the need for frequent contact with her parental units. In fact, perhaps she even feels the need for limited contact. I remember this feeling when I was her age. But at the age I am now, ready to retire, I'm more and more aware that the amount of quality time I have left with her is diminishing. I'm aware that there is everything to be gained by expressing love at every opportunity, of maximizing the time we spend together, of inviting her and her partner for dinner as often as they will come. Death brings so many opportunities for sadness and regret, but it also prompts introspection and reevaluation of what matters in life. I think one of the best things that has come out of grieving my parents' deaths is valuing every moment I get to have with Roya and making sure she knows what she means to me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lorna Wilson, and I actually don't know how long I've been a member of the congregation, but it's been a while. And I'm currently the communication coordinator as well. So what I want to talk about today is called Dreams Lost and Dreams Transformed. We all have dreams that we hold for our futures, aspirations for how we imagine our lives will unfold. These dreams energize us and provide meaning and direction. So what happens? What can we do when our dreams go unfulfilled? Or perhaps worse, they're shattered or snatched away. When I reflect on my broken or lost dreams, I succumb to overwhelming heartache. Perhaps it's the other way around. It may be that when I'm feeling sad, my thoughts are drawn to those myriad losses, and I spiral down even further. Either way, the impact of lost dreams and grief has been profound. What can we do with these feelings of grief and sorrow? Recently, we observed Thanksgiving here in Canada, and I felt very blue. Family holidays only serve to highlight the vacuum in my life. These special occasions underscore the gap between the dreams I once had and my current reality. In response to a childhood that lacked family or family traditions, I had a longing for more depth and celebration. As a result, I attempted to create meaningful rituals and traditions by adopting and adapting other people's practices. For example, one such occasion was based on a custom of Dutch friends. They lived in the country and would go out Christmas Eve with family and friends to cut down a tree. We'd plow together through the snow, walking in the footsteps of the person in front of us. Once we agreed on the perfect tree, Ronnie and Jackson would cut it down, and we would drag our prize back to the house and warm up with hot chocolate by the fire. After a delicious Christmas feast, we would decorate the tree, getting increasingly jolly as the evening progressed. This was the kind of celebration I longed for, and after my friends moved away, I carried on as much of their tradition as I could. Although I couldn't chop down the tree myself, I did invite friends over for a meal and to help decorate our tree. To claim an aspect of the tradition for my own family, I would buy a new bulb or decoration featuring the current year. This would be the last thing to be placed on the tree, and eventually that honor went to my son, Matthew. Then, after everyone left, Matthew and I would have a small glass of Bailey's and open one Christmas gift. The rest remained under the tree for the next morning. Opening one gift on Christmas Eve was a special treat I had initiated with my daughter, Jennifer. After Matthew's death, over 11 years ago now, I gave away the Christmas decorations and I no longer have a tree. Over and over again, I have counted lost dreams the way others count blessings and descend into grief, self-pity, and even despair. Recently, I was gifted with a new perspective, a new way of looking at my grief and losses. Each morning before I sit down for my daily meditation, I read an excerpt from Mark Nepo's Book of Awakening, Having the Life You Want by Being Present to the Life You Have. His words for October 16th took me to a different place and have transformed my experience. Nepo says, each dream we try to bring life to brings us closer to the mystery of being alive. Breathe deeply and try to see each lost dream not as a failure, but as a shimmering bead on a necklace your life is making. I love sparkles and prisms of light, and I'm delighted by the image, a shimmering bead on a necklace your life is making. I'm sitting with his words, not to analyze them rationally or even integrate them into my belief system. Rather, I am simply letting the words and the image be absorbed deeply into my heart, into my being, into my body, where true wisdom resides. And I feel different. Even the act of transforming each pain into a precious and beautiful bead shifts my experience and lets my spirit soar and shimmer. I imagine each lost dream transformed from pain and despair into sparkling beauty and shimmering light. Thank you.
Many of you will remember my late wife, June, and I look back on her as a wonderful inspiration for my life, but I think also as a wonderful inspiration for many other people. June was very much the person who organized my life. She brought me to Canada and she found me my first job working on the Great Lakes. And my passion was working on birds and working on the effects of chemicals on birds and bird reproduction. And I suppose the piece that was the real contribution that I was able to make was to
find evidence amongst the birds that there were very serious deformities which were occurring as a result of being exposed to chemicals in the environment. Beside me here is a young bald eagle that we took out of the nest. And as you can see, it actually has a twisted beak. This was very highly significant. This really indicated that we had something very serious going on in the Great Lakes as a result of chemicals being put into the environment. And this really started off an enormous detective story. This is a forensic story to try to find out what happened, what chemical did this, and who was responsible for it, and how could we stop this from occurring anymore. And I think this has been really the central organizing for my own life. These kinds of strange developmental anomalies are happening in fish, in wildlife, and happening in humans as well. The gratifying part about it that I took a long time to learn was how important science is. If you get the science right, if you make the causal link between what you observe in the field and put the evidence together to prove the specific cause, that's the first part that really came out of this whole process. The second part is equally as difficult, and that is to try to communicate the science and then to try to persuade the politicians that something radical has to change. And as I say, the gratifying part about it is if you get the science right and if you get the politics right as well, then you're able to actually bring about the changes to make sure that these kinds of effects aren't happening out in the Great Lakes anymore. This is the great story, this is the great finding for myself that comes out of the grief not only in losing June, but also the grief that came from finding these kinds of effects going on in the Great Lakes. And as I say, this has been the central organizing principle for how I live my life. Thank you.
I'll be the last speaker on this topic. Thank you, everyone who shared your stories about grief for humans, for lost dreams, for the planet. I'm really touched by this invitation, the topic of how grief, whether for a person or the planet, is a mirror of our love. Grief helps to remind us of what we love, and from that love, we can act to give back to our families, communities, and even to Mother Earth herself. I'm touched by other people's stories, often more than my own. And for me too, one of my griefs is the earth, the society, and the environment, and the situation my generation and the next generation are all inheriting. And sometimes my grief turns to anger, sometimes to blame, sometimes to feeling helpless, victimized. And on the other hand, it can sometimes, the grief can make me realize how much I love being alive, how much I love the planet, the trees, the animals like squirrel friends all over my backyard, and can turn to action. So some of the actions I take is trying to minimize use of plastic, trying to minimize use of water, trying to live in my own way the best I can, preserving what I have, and trying to encourage others, especially the next generation. And I think that this framework is very strong and powerful, is about acting out of our love for the planet, about getting to know trees and getting to spend time in nature and familiarizing ourselves with the elements and what's there. Because if we talk about, not about extracting natural resources, but if we talk about our friends, the animals, and the other beings that are a part of our daily lives, and the interactions and perhaps stewardship that we have with them, that can be so much more powerful to be allies than to be rescuers or trying to fight against more strong forces than we have. Those are some of my thoughts on this topic, and I welcome all of you to think about if you have any grief, and if it's a reflection for you of love, and if there are any actions you can take. I can give you a few seconds to think about that, and then Rebecca will introduce our next song.
Thank you, Lauren. As we explore the impermanence of our lives and the grief that we experience, some comfort may be found in nature and in those cycles that are larger than us. So this following song speaks to that. The words are repeated a few times in order so we can learn them and sing along, or feel free to just listen.
We are gone, they will remain. Wind and rock, fire and rain, they will. Fire and rain, they will remain when we return. The wind will blow and the fire will burn. When we are gone, they will remain. Wind and rock, fire and rain, they will remain when we return. The
closing words today are from Rumi. Your grief for what you've lost lifts a mirror up to where you're bravely working. Expecting the worst, you look, and instead, here's the joyful face you've been wanting to see. Your hand opens and closes, and opens and closes. If it were always a fist or always stretched open, you would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding, the two as beautifully balanced and coordinated as bird wings. And now Rebecca will close the circle.
Thank you, Lauren. So just picturing again that big circle of all our threads that we've cast around ourselves, and just bringing those back into ourselves and shrinking down our circle that has held us here today and connected us all around the town and beyond, and connecting our hearts. Thank you for joining us and creating this circle today, this circle of connection, of love, and of safety. The circle is open. We are between the circle is open but unbroken. May the love of the goddess be ever in our hearts. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again.
Please join me now in extinguishing the chalice. The words are shared in the chat. Whoops, if you require them. We gathered to light this chalice. We part, the flame lit within us, an inspired community. And now for announcements. Today is a day of celebration for many, with many Christians observing All Saints' Day, while pagans celebrate Samhain. The Canadian Unitarian Council is hosting a virtual fall gathering of Unitarians across the country the weekend of November 13th to 15th. There will be social events, workshops, and a national service. Let's try to get lots of ambassadors from UCG out to participate in this opportunity to connect with our fellow UUs. See the Wednesday email bulletin or the CUC website for details of how to participate. Note, because of this virtual fall gathering, there will not be a 10:30 a.m. UCG service on Sunday, November 15th, as we are asking everyone to participate in the special national service at 1 p.m. instead. The service is being live streamed on YouTube, and instructions will be in the bulletin and on the website. Please keep in mind that the UCG Dismantling Racism group meets on Zoom every second Saturday at 4 p.m. Most recently, we've been exploring Canadian Indigenous experiences through videos and podcasts. There will be a new Members Day on November 21st. Contact Carrie McDonald or Martha Savage for further information. Please feel free to take a quick bio break before we return for a discussion circle at 11:45 a.m.